to start, so one disclaimer, English is not my first language. So if you get confused, ask. If I start inventing words and you understand them, it's fine. If you do not understand them, ask. And just ask if you have any questions. So the name of the talk, I think in the program was conservation grazing, but this is kind of way bigger than the grazing. The conservation grazing is a tool to manage the whole preserve. So I decided to change the name and name it as the Lucia Preserve Grasslands because that's what we're going to be talking about. So as you know, this is Piñon Peak 3-4 weeks ago. So this year has been pretty different than last year. We were expecting that by this time of the year, the grasses will be barely getting their seed heads, the flowers will start coming out, and we will have like 27 inches of rain. So we're like 50-something inches of rain, the grass are done, the flowers are done, so it's very good. So we're kind of like 3 weeks late, but it's fine. So before we start, I want to talk a little bit about who am I, why I'm here, why I work in Grasslands. So this is the Janos Biosphere Reserve in Chihuahua, Mexico. I've been working there for the last almost 20 years. So I started so it's just like in the very southern edge of the states. This is New Mexico, Arizona border. This is Sonora. This is Chihuahua in Mexico. So it's 1.5 million acres of conservation land or research equipment. Our research lab managed to turn this into a federally protected area in 2009. So pretty much I've been living in the grasslands for the last 20 years of my life. And I really didn't like vegetation that much. So my audience is like, I used to be a wildlife biologist, and I started working with black bears, mountain lions. I worked like following jaguars for a year, and then in Chihuahua I was working with bison and prairie dogs. And what took me to ranching and grasslands is that the main issues with all these species is that cattle ranchers don't like them, right? Like the main issue with jaguars in Mexico is that they get killed because they eat livestock. The main issue with bison all over the place is that the ranchers don't like them. And prairie dogs, they're like the favorite thing to poison. So I started kind of very curious on how I can get into ranching and into land management to kind of like shift the tides. So in 2006, I started my PhD program that was pretty much researching the livestock-wildlife interaction. I started to find a way that you can put those things together without destroying any. Because, I mean, you need to provide livelihoods to people, but at the same time, you need to do better on the ecosystem. So that's pretty much like my background. This is me, the first day that I started working with cows. And after 15 years of, well, since 2016 now, working with cows and with communities and land management, we came out to a lot of like management strategies. Like we directly manage more than 10,000 acres of land, like doing actual changes in the land. And pretty much we came to the conclusion that cows are not the problem. The problem is the one that is behind the cows and how you use them. And sometimes you can use them to do well. Right? So going back to our topic, we're going to start with a quick grassland ecology class. Really quick, and again, if you have questions, just ask. So there's 3 very kind of main grassland types in the world. So the alpine grasslands, if some of you go and ski fairly often, you notice that there's a point in space where trees stop and grasslands start. And that is not because somebody locked them down, it's just because trees cannot grow after that line, like the fluids of the roots cannot just go up. So in these places, pretty much altitude and latitude are what pretty much bring the grassland there. So you have the tree line, and these places tend to burn fairly often. Like alpine fires are pretty common, and pretty much it's like no problem with them. And herbivory, which is another big driver of grasslands, is pretty minimal there. Don't really play a big role. It's still there, but doesn't play a big role. Then we have the arid grasslands, like the one in Chihuahua. So those ones tend to be the continental grasslands, like the humongous extensions of grasses, like Australia, South America, Africa, and the Great Plains. So in this one, the weather is the one that explains why there's grassland. So it doesn't rain enough to be a forest, but just rain a little bit more to not be a desert. So that is what keeps the grassland there. If you add a little bit more water, it will go to a forest. If you take a little bit of water, it will go to a desert. And in these ones, this was where herbivory and fire played pretty much the major roles too in maintaining the open. So fire goes through, removes the woody vegetation, and you have all these humongous herds of mammals going back and forth. Bison, elephants, like wild beasts, all those things are the ones that shape these places. And then you have temperate grasslands, and they are a mess. These are all grasslands. So in California grasslands, if you think about these definitions, no one really applied on why we have a grassland. Like the weather, we have enough rain to grow a redwood forest. The tree line and the altitude and latitude doesn't play, we're pretty much like at sea level. So then why we have a grassland, it doesn't really go with any of this. So pretty much the answer is disturbance. So these grasslands depend on disturbance. And mainly, so when I talk about the herbivory, it's these kind of herbivory. That you have like thousands of mammals grazing through, opening the landscape, and do not allow anything else to grow but grasses. So when we talk about California grasslands, we're talking about disturbance-driven grasslands. And before we keep going, we need to go back in time. And it's really hard to go back in time, but to understand kind of like the origin of the grasslands, imagine one of your shrublands in the preserve, like one of those coyote brush blanketed hills. And then you have a lightning strike, and that starts a fire. So after the fire, a grassland will emerge. And you have seen that when you get your lot mowed, and suddenly there's a grassland the next year, and you have like all the wildflowers. So historically, the only grasses growing in California, especially like in coastal California, were bunch grasses, perennial. That means that they don't die. They can like have more than 1 year life. And they tend to be almost evergreen. So this idea of golden hills of California are pretty new. Like 200 years ago, there was no golden hills. There used to be grasses and flowers. So pretty much like fire, either by lightning strikes or by indigenous communities, was pretty much the main driver. And then you have herds of elk and pronghorn going through them. But if you research a little bit on the diet of pronghorn and elk, they eat grasses, but they like more forbs. So that pretty much talks about how the grasslands used to be. So then we have the Columbian Exchange, and that's when two continents that have been separated for millennia met again. So species that actually start in this continent and then disappear, like horses, came back pretty much like 15 or 20,000 years after. And so you have cows, horses, donkeys, all the stuff that came with Christopher Columbus. And then you have a new set of plants that were not in this continent either. And at the end, we can talk about them. Pretty much we brought a sample of each of them. So this pretty much changed how the grasslands in California look. The ones that joined us yesterday for our hike, I think they have like a 4-hour plus of grassland questions, and it was pretty fun. So in the exchange, we have like new animal species, cows, horses, for that. New plant species. Some of these species just became naturalized. Are plants that are not native, are exotic, but they didn't turn invasive. That means that they can like arrive, they get into the system, but they're not a problem. Like they feel space, but they don't become dominant, and they don't kick any other species out. We have the invasives, and you understand what invasive means by this time. Like suddenly your grassland gets full of thistle, or full of poison hemlock, or full of mustard. So those are the species that we describe as invasive. Then we have the fire suppression policies. So burning is getting harder and harder. So how you manage these grasses that depend on disturbance is getting more complicated. And grazing can be good, but it can be very bad too. So overgrazing or overusing the resources can end in destroying the grasslands too. So that brings us to late 90s. So Rancho San Carlos, before the preserve, was a cattle ranch. Around 2 centuries of cattle ranching management. If you ask the old timers, they will tell you that they used to remove mesquite, coyote brush, either like with bulldozers and chains. So there was like a lot of management happening here to allow the grasslands to thrive. So these old photos, I just find them in the archive. Like this is the day that the cows leave the preserve. 1996, 1997. I always say it wrong. 1995. So I think this is Potrero area. Looks like Potrero. And this is the top of Piñon Peak. And you can see that it looks pretty green. But if you kind of like are critical, it looks like pretty low. Like you can see almost all the leg of the cow. That would be pretty impossible these days. Like if you go to a pasture and see your cows, seeing their legs that easily will take you some time. So you can see that the grasses were like super low. They're very green, so this is probably the rainy season. So the grass was like this tall. And you can see the flowers, but you can see only one color. So it looks pretty, but when you look closer, it's like really short and maybe just one species dominating the space. So the cows were gone, and as we discussed, this place is driven by disturbance. So again, this is like, I think it's in the same roundup in the 90s. That's Jim Smith, that's a time traveler. We have him in the preserve still. This is the same oak. And you can see how these coyote brushes are encroaching into the grassland. Rick knows this place. It's the first thing you see when you leave your house. So, the other changes that were start to be obvious over time is that the grasses start getting gray. Like they lose their green color. They were not even colored. And I mean, I learned this through people. So you're living here, so you can tell me like, oh, that's not true. So this is Piñon Peak in February 2012. And I mean, this is the rainy season. You can see the sky is overcast. And it's all gray, full of thatch. So that doesn't look that healthy at all. So pretty much these conditions make the Conservancy and the management of the place to start thinking differently. Kind of like, there's something missing here. Like, the grasses are looking pretty bad. So that's when the grazing program started in 2013. So Leslie Doran's epic cattle woman brought some cows. I'm not saying that because she's So one of the things that changes too dramatically when the preserve got born is that grazing this place probably is the hardest place to graze in the world. Like navigating your roads, your driveways, behind your houses, try to do not have cows in your pools. That requires an effort that no rancher has to face ever. We have had some of my friends in Mexico that manage like 40,000 acres of land, turning them around. They're like, dude, you have more work with 50 cows than the work we have with 1,000. So honestly, like moving through the preserve is pretty challenging, and sometimes people kind of like, oh, they're just the cows. It's not like moving through is pretty hard. So pretty much Leslie came, brought cows, brought a bag of a golf bag, some pickets, and started fencing. And pretty much like Leslie designed a way to move cows through the place, which it's amazing. I mean, it's really nice to get to a place where the hardest problem is already solved. So the objective of the cattle program at the beginning was pretty much reintroduce the disturbance cycle that we lost, right? I mean, it's super hard, but it's pretty simple. And with a big objective of foster the biodiversity of the place, and obviously the aesthetics and all these values. So the actual points that were focused on was to reduce the thatch. Thatch is just like the dead material of the grasses, so a grass grows and part of their leaves die. And because nobody eat it or they didn't get burned, they just like stay there. And then new leaves grow and they die and they just stay there. So you start just accumulating dead material that at the end then taking space and killing the grass itself. So the idea was to remove that by adding the disturbance, improving the soil health. Pretty much like if you don't burn, there's no way of those nutrients to come back. Like when grasses dry, if you grab like a dead grass and you try to chew it, comparing it with like a fresh grass and you try to chew it, you will see that the dead one is just a straw. It's pretty much just carbon. So it's really hard to digest. So even like insects, like grasshoppers, will eat green, but they won't eat dry. So once it's dead and old, it just stays there forever. I mean, not forever. So removing that allows the vegetation to kind of like redigest again, and bringing cows, it includes like all the manure and all the urine that goes to the cycle. So you add water, because every time that a cow pee, there's water added to the system, and all the nutrients, like you have nitrogen, and a lot of other ones that I just forgot. And the other one was managing invasive species, and probably that is the most challenging part of the whole project. And we will talk about this further. Manage shrub encroachment. Cows won't eat shrubs, as you know, but they will go by, they will trample it, they will thin it. And reducing fuel loads, like talking about fire, removing thatch pretty much is removing like a thick layer of flammable material. So they start going, but at the same time, my understanding is that there was like so much thatch that cows were having a hard time eating all that cardboard, right? So you have like, cows pretty much eat grasses. Like cows are pretty picky about what they eat. They like grasses and some forage, but they will go for grasses. And if you bring them to a place that is super dead, they will be eating the good stuff and then looking around and be like, oh dude, like this is bad. So in order to go around that, the Conservancy brought, I think like 1,400 goats, pretty much to jumpstart the system. So this was like a super extreme approach, super risky, and it looked cute, but for the photos and for the stories that the staff and members have telling me, I hope I don't have to do it. So this was intended to do a super heavy impact on the grasses. This was, I mean, a lot of you are on tech, so this was a hard reset. Like this is when your computer froze and you push the reset button and it gives you like if you keep going, you can lose stuff. This is exactly the thing that the Conservancy did. It was like, okay, we're going to take the risk and we're going to push that button and we're going to blow this place and start again. That was the goat approach. So this kind of impact is like if you burn the place, like everywhere where the goats went, imagine that you just burn it. So this should happen every 10 to 15 years if needed, only if needed. So I think this was like a pretty much like the time where you should do something like that, but this is not something that you should do every year. You will end up like this approach will end up destroying it. Right? So where the cows wander. So first, being a cow in this place is pretty epic. Can you imagine how much money people would pay for living in here? So we have, so at the beginning, so the program starts small. So in 2013, Leslie brought 35 cows according to her notes. So the other thing is that the Conservancy has been awesome at collecting data. Like pretty much since day one, we know how many cows have grazed in the preserve. We know where they graze and for how long they graze. And then we have, well, we keep going on the vegetation. So 2013, Leslie brought 35 cows. They grazed to the preserve and they accomplished the amazing number of 46 acres of land. So these are the polygons where they grazed in 2014. Then 2014 and 15 is where the goats came. And they grazed more than 1,500 acres. Then 2014 came, the cows, Leslie add a little bit more cows. So the grazing program grew up to 845 acres. Then 2015, 1,700 acres. So the total footprint is just added. So you can see kind of like the extent of the places that have been grazed. Then 16, a little bit more. 17 was one of the best years. Leslie was getting in full steam with cows. 2018, this is the year that I joined. We started like in Black Mountain, I think. And this is where it asked. Right now we are in a low number of cows. We'll talk about this later. But overall, we've been grazing close to 2,000 acres, kind of like an overall number. And what we do to measure what we're doing. So it is very important, like if you're doing this kind of intervention to accomplish a goal, you know if you're getting closer to your goal. Because if not, you're just like throwing resources and not really knowing if you're doing stuff right. So in the preserve, we have 27 grazing exclosures. So a lot of you have seen them. It's just like 4 rebars in the middle of the grasslands where cows are not allowed to graze. So these places let us see what would happen if cows won't graze. If cows don't graze in the preserve, this is how they're going to be looking. So we have 27 of these ones, and we measure vegetation, but how they look. So this is the bottom of Potrero Canyon. This is Millennium Grove, like this is the mustard patch. So this is one of our exclosures. They're like 60 by 30, 40 by 20, and that's me. So this is how they look closely. So this is the place where the cows are not allowed to graze. If you go through Google Earth, you can start looking for them. Like if you go to the preserve, you start finding them. Like they're visible now through Google Earth. So you can see the changes. Like it's pretty dramatic. So what the exclosure are measuring is like this is a place that hasn't been grazed since the 90s, and everything around has been grazed since 2013. So we have data points in, like we have 18 data points in the place that hasn't been grazed and 9 data points in the place that has been grazed. I'll explain why we have 9 versus 18 there. The idea is that this hasn't been grazed since the 90s, this has been grazed since 2013, and this one will be open next year to see how these change after. So you can have like two kind of like sister studies going at the same time. So what we do there is first we go and measure the vegetation by percentage. So we go by species. Right? So like you stand there, you have zeros to kind of look into the ground, and you count. So this is like California poppy here is like 20% of the plot. So you write that down. How much bergram you see? So this would be like a 5-6%. And then you count by species, like each species. And then this is kind of like the circle of life of science. So this is the fun part. You go to the field, take the data, then you write it down. This is when you know that your botanist is happy. This exclosure was awesome. It was full of native vegetation. So we write the data. These take us between like each of these places take us between 2 hours when they're very simple. The ones that are very simple tends to be the ones that are very sad. It tends to be like thistles and like 3 or 4 species. So you go super fast where it's like full of nothing. And the ones, Jenna did one that was the record here, like 4 hours and change, to pretty much like go through the whole thing. So you get the data, then our botanists send the data in an Excel file, and then we have to promise interns that it's going to be fun. And actually this was today, like 3 hours ago, Madison was still punching data. So the data got entered into the computer, so we can start talking about the results. So the amount of data that we have right now is pretty nice. I mean, it's nice because we can tell a lot, but it's a lot. So I'm going to give you 2018, that is one of the first years that we have cleaned, and how the changes look. So all these graphs, each of these columns represent one group of plant species. So here are the native bunch grasses. So these are like, this is gold. These are the ones that we want to improve. Then these are the native perennial wildflowers. We want them to. These are gold. These are the native annual wildflowers. Everything that is native, pretty much, we want it back. Right? And then, to better understand. So this is where our heart is. Like, this is our target. And these ones, it could be better. But if we're here, it's fine. And these ones are the ones that we hate, like these guys. So with grazing, obviously grazing is the G. So we're noticing that what we want, it's being increased by the activity of the cows. And these are pretty much the grasses and wildflowers. Then the it could be better portion of it that are the exotic annual grasses, that are, some of them are up there. So if you improve the conditions for a native grass, you're pretty much improving the conditions for an exotic grass too. You cannot tell the cows like just impact this species but not that one. Like they go and do their thing all over the place. So grasses and wildflowers have been improved by cattle grazing across the preserve. And then the thing that we don't like, and this was amazing to start seeing this pattern, because I mean, if you go to the exclosures, it's pretty obvious. But sometimes things that are obvious to our eyes are not obvious to our metrics. Sometimes you're going to like, oh, this is going to be awesome, and then you plot it, and there's no difference, there's no pattern, and you just are like, I'm doing anything wrong. So in this case, we notice that the exotic perennial grasses, these are grasses that are highly invasive. And like, remember the word invasive is that they can take over a whole extension of land and remove all the other ones. So these ones are being reduced by grazing, and weeds, and here I talk about weeds like these ones, like all the thistles, poison hemlock, mustard. So all the ones you hate in your open lands, that's my classification of weeds. They're being reduced. They're not being eliminated, but they're being reduced. And then the shrubs that in this case are native, like coyote brush. Coyote brush is a native, and as I said before, it's the source of the grassland, right? Like we don't want to destroy all of it. We want to keep it away from our grasslands. So that is like a delicate dance too. Like you can remove up to an area, but you don't want to eliminate it from the place because that is the safeguard of the grassland. So that is being produced by cattle too. So that is like, all these are awesome news. But if it's that awesome, oh, wait. So this is how the difference looks. So this is the same exposure that I showed you with me at the bottom. So this is now grazing since the 90s, and this is grazing since 2013. And we are going to stop here a little bit. So all these shades of gray are the dead plant material. So the heavy grays probably is like very old, like 5-year-old grasses that died back in the day, and they're still just like waiting for something to change. The white, these clear ones, probably are like last year, 2 years old vegetation that are just like occupying space. You can see the little bit like greening stuff that's kind of like, please give me some light, but it's not much coming. This is soaproot, like some of you know them. It's like one of the big forbs in the grasses. Like we like that one. And you can see that the wildflowers are like one here and there, but they don't look that happy. And then in the graze area, first you can see the soil. Like this is bare ground, but actually there's space and there's light and there's resources for species to move in. The thatch, like the gray material is pretty minimal. The white material is pretty minimal. So looks better, at least from the air. Karen has always asked us if we use drones, so I was like, I better use the drone for this stuff. So this is how it looks when you're standing next to it. So again, this is no grazing, so you can see like all the dead material, and this is grazing, and you can see that it's greener. So we have thatch, and that is kind of like dead material that is just like down on the ground. We have weeds, and we have all this dead standing vegetation. And in this one, this exposure is amazing. Like there's no weeds in it. Like we couldn't find a single thistle. This is an exception. This is not. I mean, it's not like if you bring cows, thistle will disappear. That's not true. I never said that. But in this case, their impact was super nice. So that's what I take it for. This is in the flats. If you're super excited about this talk, you can go and walk there. So this is, again, this is the non-grazing, and this is the graze area. So in this way you can see one species, it's like one grass species, and this veg species with the purple flowers, and that's it. And in this one you can see both, and then all these are native clovers in the understory. And this is how it looks from afar. So you have like all the dead material, and this is the one that is being grazed, that doesn't have all the dead material, and you have just more life. But grasses and plants are not the only thing we count. It's the only thing I count, so I don't have the fun part of it. So Dr. Christie spent a lot of time out looking for critters. So this is our tiger salamander number of ponds with positive detections. So if you see this is 2003 to 2010, you can see the decline. that pretty much matches the grassland decline. And then cows arrive here, and then you can see that suddenly the tiger salamander got, like, we find it again. So this is like another like big positive on the impact of the cows. Then with grassland birds, this is a pattern bigger than us, right? Like all the grassland birds are migratory birds that sometimes they spend the summer in Canada and they winter in southern states or in Mexico, or they go all the way to Argentina. So what happened with birds in the grasslands is not only because what we do in the preserve. So this pattern tends to be more like, could be like a continental pattern rather than a preserve pattern. But by maintaining the ecosystem available, we're helping the grassland birds all over the continent to have a place to land. Right? Like right now, like grasslands in good conditions are fewer and fewer. So just by having a good grassland available for these traveling animals, we're helping them to survive the environmental crisis. Then arthropods. Arthropods are all the insects that we tend to do not like. So we have an intern from Stanford that pretty much contacted Dr. Christie with a question like, I'm interested to follow up with some insect species and see how they do in grasslands. I mean, there was like not a clear question. So what he did, he pretty much like went to our exclosures with a net and started just like catching insects and counting them and see what happened when you graze versus when you do not graze. So in a nutshell, he found out that there were like more species, like more diversity of insects in places where cows had grazed compared to places where cows hadn't. And if you can like put everything together, you will see like an ecosystem that is pretty homogeneous with 2 or 3 species will host a pretty homogeneous community of everything else and 2 or 3 species. So, and the expression that he measures, the P ones are piñon pig and the M ones are mesa. And this, I took this from his poster presentation, so these are his words. So he says like a stark contrast inside M1 between the ungrazed exclosure, left, this one, and the annually grazed area. The exclosure is overrun with non-native thistle. And this is how he was doing his work. So the results overview is like the native biodiversity increase when we graze, and this applies to wildlife and vegetation. Right? Like the results are pretty striking. We achieve like the thatch reduction that we were looking for, and we achieve the field reduction. We are reducing the weed density, and we are improving the ecological health and the aesthetics of the Santa Lucia preserve grassland. This is across the preserve. But if that's the case, why we still have weeds? If that's the case, why we still have issues? Well, because land management, it's hard. And management is forever. Like we went, like part of our board and us, we went to a visit in Marin County to look at the mountain management strategies. One of the guys was describing management. He's like, managing for weeds is like when you cross the Golden Gate Bridge, you always see a guy painting. Like every time that you cross the thing, you see a guy painting. And once it's done at the end, he needs to start. So pretty much that's the approach to management. Like you cannot stop. So as you saw, the grazing program, we've been going from like 80 something cows the most to 40 to 30 cows. So our impact has been wide, but hasn't been intense enough. And the other is that we change a lot in the preserve. So when this used to be a solid ranch, you have minimal traffic. I mean, probably was like this house and whoever lived here and whoever managed the land, but you don't have all the contractors, all the construction sites, all the landscapers coming in and out. So you have a lot of ways to bring weeds into the system. Like pretty much, if there's a road, that's a chance for a weed to travel. You can have it in your socks, your dog can pick it up at your last hike. So there's just like a lot of alleys for the weeds to enter. And we are not going to stop it because it's impossible to stop. We can get better at preventing it. But the best thing that we can do is to really manage toward that. Like, we know that this is happening, so let's just improve our management and increase our capacity. So this is the map of the areas treated by the Conservancy between 2014 and 2018. So because of weeds and pretty much the sense that something needs to be done, after our last November board meeting, the board instructed us to prepare a grassland initiative. Kind of like, let's deal with the problem and let's really kind of like, I don't remember who was the one who was like, let's get at work to weeds. I was like, oh, that's nice. So between the team and the board, we prepared the grassland management proposal. So the objective of this is to pretty much like focus right now on the grasslands of the preserve. The grasslands are scattered all over the place. We have like big chunks of grasslands, like I think this is Piñon Peak, Mesa, Black Mountain, Vasquez, Rancho San Carlos, the Flats, the Animas, and then Long Ridge. It's super hard to graze. We are trying to find out how we get there, because just like moving through there, and it's complicated. So our scope is pretty much to touch or at least know what's happening in all the grasslands in the preserve. The vision of the program is the Santa Lucia Preserve grassland health and beauty are recovered and maintained into the future. That is like a super ambitious vision, but it's not a 1 year thing. Like this is pretty much like from now on we're going to be managing. Like we cannot stop. Like if you start, you need to keep going, because the moment you stop, the diesel will go back, the thatch will come back, and then we need to start from ground zero. We need to bring the boats again. We don't want that. And our mission is like to systematically enhance the health of the Santa Lucia Preserve grasslands to sustain their ecological values and processes, and where feasible, to recover grassland present in the 90s that now are covered with weeds or brush, and we will use the best science available, and if there's not science available, we'll produce it. And we implement the best possible techniques, and if they do not exist, we'll try to find them. So our timeline, and this is like the first proposal is a 5-year proposal, and after these 5 years, we'll probably take a break and decide what's next. I mean, not a break on doing it, but just like a break with our board. So where we go from now? So right now we have a approved budget of $2 million in the next 5 years, and the idea is like to expand the conservation grazing program. We're seeing that the results are good and they're positive, so we need to do more. The weed management itself, Jenna joined us in July, August? Yes. August last year, and for some time it was kind of like Jenna and myself answering David Simpson and all of you questions about weeds, so we said like we need more hands on deck. So it's to improve and increase the weed management team. Describe fire, Dr. Christie is full on fire, so it's probably like bringing fire back. Like we know that we need fire. Like as we were discussing yesterday, if we could burn the grasses in this place, it would be awesome. We really need fire to be back in the system, but we need to do it smart and safe. And then the scientific part of it, like we want to keep measuring it, we want to be able to be, like pretty much like science and data keeps you accountable, right? It's like I can show you and be like, yeah, I'm accomplishing what we plan to, or it's not working and we're going to change. So for the future, the grazing team, I mean, we still have Leslie Lawrence with us, it's our guru. Like every time we have a problem or a question, we call her. Sometimes she answers, no, she answers. Then Kyle and Rue are our current like all like foods on the ground, and they take care of the cows, but we're increasing the herd. Our plan is to have 50 more cows by the end of this year, like almost to 100, and hopefully 150 cows in the next 3 years. And because of that, we need more herd. So we just hired Dana Cormany. She just finished rangeland management. Rangeland management major. Maybe I'm saying it wrong, and it's not that school, but it's close. She graduated last week. She's going to start working with us in a week and a half from now. Right now we have only 43 cows, hashtag missing cow. Somebody's here.
Still missing.
Still missing. So our two herds are moving in opposite directions. The people that lives in Rancho San Carlos, we're getting there. We're almost there.
Oh, I love seeing it.
And these are the cows in the flats. Oh, they used to be here. We moved them a week ago, week and a half ago. They look very sad,
It's a
very
little bit
skinny.
like, where's Waldo? You know, it's like
Exactly.
you never know where they're going to pop up.
My bet is that someday somebody's just going to be like, oh, there's a cow. And that's it. But hopefully it's soon. So then our field crew, all these good-looking humans, there's two of them here, Ryan and Austin, are under the direction of Jenna, which is here too. So from March, from March till now, we have covered 350 acres of weed management. So we've been doing shrub pulling, pretty much like removing French broom. So once you pick like Rancho San Carlos around lot 5, like after the Calafer property, if you see the fence with Palo Corona, some of you maybe haven't noticed, but it's very yellow in the other side of the fence and not that yellow on this side. So we're kind of like pushing the French broom towards the biggest patches and cleaning in between. So it looks way better. They've been doing herbicide application. I don't like herbicides. A lot of our team is pretty cautious about the herbicides, but the size of the problem pretty much makes us use it. We want to be in a place where we can stop using it. It's possible, but not yet. So we will be moving towards that goal, but it's not close. And they've been mowing either poison hemlock, mustard, and some kind of brush. And just to give you like a size, if you see the polo field, this area is like 19 times bigger than the polo field in the last 3 months. So we're going pretty strong. We hope to achieve 500 acres by the end of this year. We'll see.
Yeah.
But how this look? So Rick is here. He's part of this story. So this is Mesa. This is Chamizal Pass. This is Mesa Trail. Yeah. These are really nice grasslands on top of Chamizal. So last year we realized that we have some extra funding coming from NRCS, from the USDA, to do some coyote brush mowing. So we decided to go here to these polygons and mow it, because they were like high value grasslands, and we're kind of getting coyote brush creeping into it. So we mow. So the good thing is that Google Earth is super fast these days, especially if you live in California. So this is before we mow in 2018, it was like a week before we start mowing. We contract with CSD. David Simpson was super happy to be in a tractor on the winter. This is like his time off, so he was like, yeah, I can do it. So then the satellite went by, and you can see that these places were already mowed. And suddenly this exposure came super obvious. Actually, I need to go and mow that thing, but soon. And David Simpson tractor broke down, and you can see that when this photo was taken, he was up to here. So pretty much this is where his tractor broke, and it took him like a week to be able to mow the patch. This is mowed already. And when we did this, Ron Eastman and Rick Warner, I think, were the first one to call us to kind of like, what is happening there? And Christy was like, oh yeah, the Conservancy is working and removing some brush. He was like, it's awesome, but it looks like a bad haircut. Like, it's just like a sharp edge. And we're like, no, like we have a plan, but we never communicate to anyone what we were doing, which was a mistake. So we will be more clear of what we're doing. So pretty much the whole side is the bad haircut. In the Conservancy, that's the nickname of this area. So this was November last year, I think, like early November. So then how it looks today. So this is all the area that we mow and we manage. So we mow first and then went back and use herbicide to pretty much suppress all the thistles for coming in. So we graze first, so we can reduce the vegetation below the shrubs. Then we mow, and after we mow, we came back and we use herbicides. It's not herbicides or anything? Oh no, in Jena, mow mustards and poison hemlock. So this is how our new grassland look. Actually, you can see the bites that Jela did with the mustard mowing. So all this was covered on Coyote brush last year, and now it's pretty much like free. So besides that, for the science aspect of it, like it's a lot of data, and we just don't have the bandwidth to go through all of that. Dr. Christie and I wish that we can just sit on our computers and just punch through there, but we have a lot of stuff to do. So we're just increasing our collaborations with other institutions. So right now we have a strong collaboration going with the USDA Agricultural Research Service. That's probably one of the biggest science institutions on grassland management. We've been working with the University of California, with the Agriculture and Natural Resource Department. We have one of their members yesterday helping us in our grass hike. We have the interns from the California State University. The California Invasive Plant Council just contacted me to start talking about how they can use cows as a weed management tool. With Dr. Christie, you know that our collaboration with CAL FIRE is pretty strong. And Ventana Wildlife Society has been working with us with the bird camps. So there's a lot of stuff that we still need to do, but I think we're moving forward. So Karen Harroof, like 2 days ago. So this talk, I finished adding slides like an hour ago because people were like, oh, you should add this and you should add that. Like, yeah, I can just keep adding. So Karen asked us to include a slide on how you can help. So I think the first thing that you can do is like, if you have questions or you have just like, what should I do? Just contact us. Like we can go and have a visit, we can go for a hike. A lot of you have already contacted us. Like, for example, like the pit slot, if you see it now, it looks, I think it looks awesome. So we grazed it twice. Then we designed a thing called the open land management plan that Nancy put together. So it's a short prescription document that we go to your lot and we tell you what you can do to improve the conditions of it. We give you the document. The grazing it's a conservancy. It's a conservancy gift, but everything else pretty much you need to pay for it. But we give you the prescription already, so you can go to your landscaper or final contractor. It's like, I need you to do this. There's not much room to play. And whatever questions they have, they can just contact us and we can adapt it. And it's fully adaptable. We write a prescription, but if they start going and there's a problem or something needs to be changed, we can change it. Then come to our events. We're kind of cool sometimes. And for the invasive weed management, now you will have the guide that Nancy put together. And if you have questions, call us. And then if you're going to mow for weeds, be sure that they don't have seeds. If you mow when they have seeds, you're helping them a lot by dispersing the seeds. So right now, we're still on time to mow. Am I correct? It's like most of the weeds are still in flowering stage. So there's still some time to mow. After they get into seed, then you're removing them from the system, but you're just spraying them. So we can help too in that case. And just to finish, I want to share some images for you to remember that this place is awesome. Because sometimes it's kind of like you get so into the weeds that you forget that the place is awesome. So Piñon Peak is green. It's not gray anymore. And this is the top of Piñon Peak. We were hiking yesterday. So you have places which so high like native cover that it's insane. It's one of the few places in California where you can see this. Yesterday, the advisor from the University of California was saying that any grassland in California with more than 10% of native cover was outstanding. And some of our grasses are way above that, like more than 50% like native cover. So part of the collaboration that we're having is because we tell the people what we have and then they come and see us like, oh yeah, I want to work with you guys. So just because of the place, not because of us. So that's it. Disturbance. This is Trapper's Loop. So this place got burned on Solaris fire. And if you hike through this place, the flower cover was just outstanding. The diversity was outstanding. So you can see the relationship between disturbance and diversity. It's all over the preserve. So this is the top of Black Mountain, like the Chen family houses here. So this is mainly grass. I didn't saw this grass last year anywhere in the preserve, and now it's all over the place. It's another video. And thank you.
There are 20,000 acres here. How much is grassland that could be grazed? And do you plan on grazing all that grassland?
Yeah, so we have 5,000, and depending which layer of GIS you consult, it's 5,240 something acres or 5,700 and change. So no, we are not going to graze everything just because there's some of them are super hard to access. It's pretty much impossible for us to. And I wouldn't say impossible. It's way too hard to go there. So we are going to be grazing in the biggest kind of like grassland extents, like all the big chunks of grasses that you see, we will be grazing there. And with the data, we're defining some places that probably grazing is not making that much of a difference, so maybe we can skip those ones for some time. And so all the management is going to be changing, so the big chunks of grasslands, we're going to be doing those ones. The more challenging for us to move the cows, we will be thinking if we can bring a subset of cows. So if you see the cows that are moving to Rancho San Carlos, you see that there's 34 cows in the big herd kind of going towards here, and then there's 8 heifers going that opposite direction. So the reason why there's 8 is that we separate those ones so we can have a smaller herd that we can use in like smaller spaces. So we want to reach as far as we can, but that needs a lot of collaboration with the bovine team. So
You're going to buy more cows? Or?
yeah, so we're buying 100 more cows over the next 2-3 years.
So, how often did you say that the goats need to come by every?
So the goats should be. I mean, if you match the goats' impact with like a wildfire regime, it should be. I mean, wildfires, and Christy's here, so she can say. I think it's like 7 to 8 years. 7 to 10 year period when you have a fire, right? So if we want to go by the book, let's say like every 8 years. But again, this is only if you need them to be back. And honestly, I think right now we don't need them. We're fine without them. So it's more like reading the conditions of the place, and hopefully we don't need them again. I mean, the idea of having the conservation grazing program going, and having the weed management crew is that you don't need to do that kind of intervention. Like in the past, I think it was very lucky that we didn't have to pay kind of like the actual price that the coach charge. But by a $400 by acre, and you need to raise 5,000 acres, the check for that will be pretty steep. So I think the idea here is to manage in a way that we won't need that kind of intervention.
How often, if you had enough cattle, would you want to keep grazing the same acreage?
Yeah, so all that, again, nature is pretty complicated, so that changed. So for example, the flats, they look awesome, but a lot of it is hardened grass, which is an invasive perennial grass. So one of the qualities of that grass is that it grows really fast, it recovers super fast, and you can graze it. That's why it was brought to the States pretty much for grazing objectives. So places like the flats, maybe you can graze 2-3 times a year, and you will be adding diversity. And then there's other fragile places. So in this one I would say like 3 times, and that is just me saying it right now. And the top of Pinyon Peak, 1 to 2 times a year. Maybe I would settle with 1 time a year just because the soil and the steepness of the place. So each place will have its particular, like Mesa area, I think that can hold 2 passes a year, but everything needs to be according to the season and how many cows you're moving through. So yeah, we would like all that is kind of like shift on the fly.
You mentioned something about this isn't a good time to mow, or soon it won't be a good time to mow.
Yeah.
Like I have a request in to have my big property 100 feet out from my fence, but they said because of time and your schedule that they're coming probably in the seeding time. So
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. So it's been this year we've been working pretty closely with CSD. Actually, we have everything that we're doing is kind of timed with them. So for example, like for Rancho San Carlos, we told them like we are going with the cows, so they're not mowing Rancho San Carlos now. So all the lots in Rancho San Carlos, they will wait until we finish grazing. So we can like pretty much free CSD from Rancho San Carlos so they can go somewhere else. So we're improving that, but we will still have places where we're not on time this year. But at the same time, it's like not because we won't do it this year. It means like, oh, you're doomed. It's like,
Well, they're not gonna be able to graze probably around, and
Exactly.
I'm on the golf, near the golf
Yeah.
club. But the fact that they scheduled us for, I think, late June or July
Yeah.
to get it done on that area.
yeah. Yeah, we're kind of like, we're still working with it.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of increasing the capacity for both CSD and the Conservancy. Like, the place is big, and
Yeah,
sometimes, and the thing with seasons is that everything comes at the same time. So you need to mow the whole 5,000 acres at the same time, and it's just impossible to happen.
yeah, yeah.
We have time for one more question, maybe, if you have some. Any more? Great, well, I know some of you have dinner reservations, and we don't want to keep you from that, certainly. But I want to, first of all, thank Rodrigo and the whole team.